Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Fat Minute Podcast. I am joined tonight by my co-host, the original Gerber baby, BVJ.
Hello.
I am, of course, your co-host, Don John, the fifth Teletubby, and we are joined by our special guest tonight, five-time WWE champion Trevor.
You know, it takes a lot of practice and patience, but we got it.
All right, so this episode is the first in a mini-series where we are going to do a retrospective of the decade of the 2000s, starting with, of course, the year 2000. And this idea was originally your idea, Blake.
Yep.
So why don't you go ahead and tell us what brought about this idea and why you wanted to do this?
Well, right now things aren't so chill, and I think that's all you can really say about 2020 right now is some not so chill stuff happened last night.
Okay.
And it was just like, I feel like feels like things started to get a little weirder 20 years ago, and I couldn't help but ponder, what just if some events went differently 20 years ago, what it would have been like now. Obviously, that's not like the real premise of tonight, but so yeah, why don't we just right now let's just consider that we're in halftime and everybody's got a twisted ankle, so we just need a recap.
All right.
While we're on the topic, I thank you guys for inviting me on this episode and not the next episode.
Wow, we lasted 5 minutes before a unfortunate joke, so thank you, Trevor.
Hey, it's all implied. It's all implied.
Hey, that's all that matters.
Oh man,
I do think it's cool because, like, I remember in high school, the nostalgic decade at the time was like the 80s. Everything was a throwback to the 80s. And then now in recent years, now that people our age are getting a little bit older, the nostalgic decade has become the 90s.
it's still the 80s beat to death though.
Right. And you don't really hear anybody talk about the decade of the 2000s, and some pretty cool stuff happened during that decade. Like, looking back, I was like researching for this episode. I was very surprised at some of the things that came out in the year 2000, because I was like, I thought that stuff came out way earlier or way later than when it did. So it was really cool.
Well, I can already tell you're going to be way more positive than I am this episode.
Oh no.
Well, let's get started then. We're going to start with a cultural topic. The year 2000, a big thing was the Y2k Bug. And the Y2k Bug is fucking funny to me still to this day, mainly because I feel like it was basically the the COVID pandemic of the year 2000, because most people did not fucking know what the fuck it was about. And I think to this day, most people still don't know what the fuck it was about. For those of you who don't know, the Y2k Bug was basically this fear that a lot of computer programs, since pretty much every computer program displays the date, specifically the year, as the last two digits. The fear was that the year 2000 was going to get confused for the year 1900, since they would both be presented with two zeros. And for some reason, everybody thought that was going to cause planes to fall out of the sky and electric grids to just shut down, and just all these different industries were just going to collapse at midnight on December 31st, 1999. What do you guys remember of the Y2K Bug and the media coverage of it?
Trevor, you can go ahead.
I remember that it was the basis for the only pre-cancellation Family Guy episode I like.
Yeah?
Yep.
Which episode was that?
They did an episode on Y2K.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you said.
No. And yeah, like just like you were talking about, a bunch of planes fall out of the sky. It goes all like Mad Max. Stewie turns into an octopus. It's weird.
Like, sometimes I'd like to imagine what would happen if social media existed during the Y2K crisis.
Yeah.
What do you remember of it, Blake?
So Actually, what I remember of it is that I didn't actually know about the entire thing until the past tense. Like I didn't know until a couple years later that there was this big fear, this big scare, this like, I guess pop cultural event about it. I was 10 years old at the time, or no, gonna be 10 years old. I had just turned 9 actually, and so I remember, my sister lived in Baltimore, and we went to visit her for New Year's, and like, I would guess that like no one in my family took it seriously because I feel like I would have remembered if they were on edge or concerned or worried or and we went to like the big Millennium party in Washington D.C. and like Will Smith was going to speak there and Bill Clinton was going to speak there and everything. I don't know what there was to say. Like Will Smith was going to be there. It's like, oh hey, it's 2000. It's like, okay, I don't know why we needed to hear that in Will Smith's voice, but all right. But, I remember I was just so tired, and I like fell asleep standing up with my head leaned against a tree. Like I was just so like piss poor tired, and then I got the flu.
Will Smith come out yet?
Yeah, exactly. And I got the flu so bad later that week, and so my entire memory of the year, the very beginning of the year 2000, was just being tired and like super sick, and I didn't have a good time.
That's unfortunate. I'm sorry the Y2k Bug did that to you.
But as far as like this, like I don't know, Mad Max, Matrix, Terminator event where like everything craps out, I had no idea that was a thing until like several years later.
Yeah,
I do.
Go ahead.
I do remember there were like those. I always see like memes of them now, but there were like those Best Buy stickers where they were like, "Don't forget to set your clock back" or something. But I feel like that's the most legitimate coverage I saw of it.
I'm actually looking at that right now on Google Images. Yeah, it's a Best Buy sticker, and it says, "Remember, turn your computer off before midnight on 12/31/99." And yeah, it's just okay.
Yeah, I remember the media coverage, and I remember because I was in 2nd grade at the time, and I remember a bunch of my classmates and their families like freaking out that shit was just gonna like break down, and they would be like, yeah, the year 2000, like the second the year 2000 starts, everything's gonna like shut down and blah blah blah, and I was just like, I remember even at 8 years old, I was just like, why?
Yeah.
And nobody could provide a solid answer. So it's just one of those things. It's kind of like a parallel to now with the COVID pandemic, where you see a lot of conspiracy theorists posting different crackpot shit on social media. You saw that on a much smaller scale, minus the social media, back in the year 2000 regarding that.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of it too is like, I mean, there were plenty of people that were just kind of getting their first home computer around that time, so the understanding and the concept of the technology wasn't really there yet, so people kind of bought into it easily.
That's fair. That's definitely fair. Because I think my first like home computer was like maybe a year or two before that. But let's go ahead and move on. We're going to move on into movies for a little bit.
I had Gateway. My house had a Gateway computer.
Well, that's nice, but we're moving into movies right now.
We're talking about movies now.
Whatever.
So we're going to talk about movies. The first one we're going to talk about is Gladiator, starring Russell Crowe, directed by Stanley Kubrick. It won Best Picture.
No.
What?
What?
No.
Who directed
it? Ridley Scott.
Ridley Scott. I always get those two mixed up, and I don't know why.
Was Kubrick dead at that point?
Probably.
Yes.
He died while faking the moon landing.
That's fair.
I don't know why. I always get those two confused. I'm retarded.
Oh. Kaiser's not going to like this podcast.
Well, I don't like Kaiser.
Well, they're not going to listen to it.
Yeah. Their internet router is an onion with a fucking heroin needle sticking out of it.
Yikes.
Jeez.
Kaiser looks the way Cumberland smells. Anyway, Gladiator.
Uh,
Won Best Picture in the year 2000. Trevor, what are your thoughts on the movie Gladiator?
I am glad I sat down and watched it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I know what you did there.
No,
And I hated
actually, this was like the one movie on the topics that like I hadn't seen previously, and I'm really it's one of those movies that I feel like I would have gotten around to, and I never did.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I definitely
so
agree.
I just saw it for the first time like within the last week.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it. It started kind of losing me towards the end. I watched the extended version of it too.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like over 2.5 hours long. But I mean, I'm not the biggest Russell Crowe fan in the world, but I really enjoyed kind of what he brought to the table in it.
Right.
like-
He's a very masculine character in this movie, but not like in a toxic, overbearing kind of sense.
Right. And I mean, I would have to look, but isn't this like one of Joaquin Phoenix's like first major movies?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I thought he pulled off kind of the villain pretty well. I wish you would kind of see him in that role more often. I mean, I know he just played Joker, but
Yeah, I remember when Joker first got announced with Joaquin Phoenix, and everybody's like, "Oh, really? That's interesting." And I was like, "Have you guys not seen Gladiator? Like Commodus, like that should tell you everything you need to know about how Joaquin Phoenix is going to do as Joker."
right.
But I definitely agree with you about how Gladiator is very much a movie that like it's one of those movies that you always plan to get around to, but you never really do until you finally do. And it's weird. It is a great movie, and it's a great movie to just sit down and really absorb. But it's also one of those movies that like once you watch it once, you never really have too much of a desire to see it again.
Right.
I don't think that really speaks negatively on the quality of it. I think it's just one of those movies that like once you digest it, you're just like, I have it, and that's good enough.
It's okay to have a movie that's kind of like a one and done like that.
Right. Blake, what are your thoughts on Gladiator?
I can tell you, my pop thought Joaquin Phoenix in that movie was like one of the best movie villains ever.
Yeah.
And his favorite thing he would say is, "Oh yeah, he was son of a bitch was in love with his sister." That was like that was the first thing he would say about him. But yeah, I think it's really good. In a way, I have to resent it a little bit because I feel like it started that period where Ridley Scott just wanted to do historically accurate movies, and obviously for Gladiator it worked out. But then like he made a Robin Hood movie that was like tried to be all like historically accurate and stuff, and it's like, you know, Robin Hood's supposed to be fun. Like
He's
he's
also fake.
Was that the Kevin Costner one?
No, that was with Russell Crowe in like 2010.
Oh, okay. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah. And it's like, and it kind of like also echoed with that one Clive Owen like King Arthur movie and stuff. And it's like, I just want to see those kind of characters be fun and colorful, and they make them all like. Well, I'm branching off too much here, but no, like I think Gladiator lives up to, I think it delivers for sure.
Okay. I think probably like the scene in Gladiator when Commodus kills his father, that scene still like gives me some chills. Like it's not a tough scene to watch, but it's just like, goddamn.
Well, and you also have to mention how Russell Crowe in that movie has like the most badass name ever.
Yeah.
And like his speech when he like says his full name, it's like it's a mouthful, but it's awesome.
Yeah. Fucking Maximus Decimus Meridius. That sounds like a Harry Potter spell. But moving on to the next movie, let's talk about Memento a little bit. Blake, you start. What are your thoughts on Memento, directed by Christopher Nolan?
Directed by Stanley Kubrick.
Every movie's directed by Stanley Kubrick, okay?
Yeah.
It's so I was a huge fan of Christopher Nolan. And the reason why I say was it was just like, oh well, I just really enjoyed The Dark Knight and Inception. And I still haven't seen Dunkirk, and
no love for Prestige.
Oh, Prestige was good too, but
Yeah, that's why
yeah.
you mentioned
it. As far as Memento, I just saw it one time on DVD after I had already seen like Inception, which also
Mhm.
means I had already seen The Dark Knight, and it was okay. It was cool to watch, but that would be a movie for me that I have no desire to go back and rewatch, like zero interest.
Mhm.
I'm sure that's probably a very uncool thing to say about it, but there's still a lot of people who think that that is still Christopher Nolan's best movie, and I'm like, I don't
No.
know, that just seems like it's in like the prologue area of his career when he's like finding out and figuring out his style.
Right.
So it's kind of like when people say Zack Snyder's best movie is still the Dawn of the Dead remake. It's like, well, that's kind of before Zack Snyder like found out who Zack Snyder was.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, it was fine when I saw it that one time, but I don't know. I'll rewatch Inception, probably at least a few more times in my lifetime.
Yeah, I definitely agree with like Memento. Like it's an interesting movie, but it's also a very gimmicky movie in the way that
Mhm.
the plot is presented. Um,
Hmm.
I would say maybe watch it twice, and the second time is really just to get some more clarity on the plot. But after that, like, yeah, I have no desire to ever watch it again. And it's not so much that it's bad; it's just that the gimmick of the presentation has worn off by that point. And when that wears off, like the film doesn't have too much to offer beyond that.
And also in hindsight, it's weird seeing a Christopher Nolan movie where the F bomb is dropped so much.
Yeah,
Like for me, it was
Yeah,
kind
I
of
didn't even think of
jarring.
that.
Yeah, like because most of his movies are PG-13. I think he prefers PG-13, but yeah, to see a movie where like Carrie Ann Moss is like saying "f this, f that" like every other word, and I'm not trying
Mhm.
to be a prude here, like clenching pearls or whatever, but for now, in context of Christopher Nolan movie, that's just kind of weird now.
Well, it
right.
goes back to what you said. He like hadn't quite figured himself out. I assume
Exactly.
at that point.
Yeah, because this was only what, like Nolan's like second movie.
Yes. Yeah, it was like his first like mainstream like nationwide movie. He had
Mm.
done Following before that, which was kind of like his. It was like a very. I think that was a very limited release, obviously very micro budget,
Mm-hmm.
black and white film.
Mm.
Trevor, what are your thoughts on Memento?
Well, I kind of agree with what you guys put out there. It's not something I really plan on revisiting anytime soon, but
Mm-hmm.
kind of building off what Blake was saying, with it being one of Nolan's first movies, I think it was really gutsy for him to take such a kind of convoluted approach to a plot.
Right.
You know,
Hmm.
having half the scenes work in forward chronological order and the other half working in reverse.
Mm-hmm.
I thought
Hmm.
that was kind of a gutsy approach
Yeah.
for a mainstream audience, especially for like a relatively new director.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
But at the same time, yeah, it is fairly gimmicky, and I would take most of his other movies over watching it again.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help. I'm not a fan of Guy Pearce like at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just don't like him in most stuff.
I'll see. For me, like honestly, I think if anything, Guy Pearce is like underrated and underused.
I mean, maybe if I saw him in more, and maybe I'm just jaded by Iron Man 3.
Well, yeah, that's true. Well, yeah, that's true. But like when I like a movie like well, I guess going back to Ridley Scott real quick, Prometheus, it's like either use Guy Pearce or don't use him at all. Like either have him in it or don't have him in it.
Right.
Right.
So, yeah.
All right.
But
Moving on to our next movie. Let's talk about Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
oh, fuck.
Blake, what do you remember about this movie?
I remember at the time there was literally nothing else to see in the theater.
Yeah.
And I think I saw it at a Maxi theater, the Maxi Saver. And if you're not unfamiliar with the term Maxi Saver, that was a theater in like the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area that played older movies, like movies that had been already in theaters for several months and they were discounted. Like I saw the first Shrek movie for $1 when it was about to go on VHS and DVD.
That's a
And you could be
bargain
like,
there.
Right.
and it's like, yeah, it's $1, and like also it's like, well, you know, if you would have just waited a couple more weeks, you would have owned it. But I'm like, well, for $1, I saw it again on the big screen. Like, you can't beat that.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially today.
but anyway, this is a movie like I've only seen one time, and I actually do really want to see it again because I was way too young when I saw it. And when I say that, I don't mean like the movie was like it was like, oh, it was too violent, or you know, I was too innocent for it. Like, the movie was obviously way too mature for me, and I was too immature for the movie. Like, I was just a kid, and like that's not the kind of, I don't know what my uncle was really thinking that day, because it's like, and once again, it's not like he was taking me to see a dirty movie or something, but it's like, obviously, like, plot-wise, character-wise, like, this is too intelligent for someone my age to be trying to take in right now. And I was just bored out of my mind. And when the movie ended, like, people were clapping because they were seeing, like, you know, a well-done, you know, mainstream American-released kung fu movie, or I guess it was kung fu. I don't want to be a unwoke dickhead with that, but and they're like, oh yeah, martial arts movie, and it was going to be nominated for awards and everything, and I like started booing it. And I was like, this movie sucks. Whoever directed
Get that shit out of here.
whoever directed this needs to make another movie. Which I don't understand my logic there. Whoever directed this needs to make another movie.
Pretty flawed logic.
And that's how Michael Bay's career started.
Which ultimately solidifies my point of I was too young and immature to see that movie. So I apologize to the movie itself and everyone who made it, who was involved, and I will give it another chance because I'm sure it's a pretty good movie.
Trevor, what are your thoughts on Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon?
I'll preface it by saying it's been a long time since I've watched it. I think the last time I watched it was one of my film classes back in college. But, I mean, the main thing I got out of it, even at that age, like Blake was saying, I had trouble following the plot. But you know, you wouldn't have a lot of the modern choreography we have in movies today if it wasn't for that movie.
Right.
And it really kind of came out at a point where foreign cinema was kind of reinventing itself and kind of becoming a big deal. I mean,
right.
Around that time in America, like, horror movies were kind of dwindling out, and Japan and like some of the Eastern Asian countries were like really starting to kind of reinvent cinema. So it's kind of generic to say, but I think it helped build a lot of what we have today, even though I can't remember a whole lot of plot details off the top of my head.
Right. No, I definitely agree with that. I mean, it's also been a while since I've seen this movie as well. More than anything, at that age, I remember the parodies of that movie.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, like almost every TV show at that time had at least one scene in an episode where they would like make fun of that scene in the movie where like the one dude jumps up in the air and like if the scene freezes and the camera like pans around the scene, like every show had at least one parody like that at that time.
Well, like at the time, the two main movies that everybody had to parody a moment of, it was that and then the first Matrix.
Yeah.
Like, and you literally just said the shot.
Yeah, and oftentimes in the same episode.
Yeah, like you literally just said the shot where they jump up and it goes around them and everything.
Right.
No, the main thing they made fun of in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is how like they're flying through the trees.
Yeah.
In a way, like yeah.
But from what I do remember of this movie, I remember, like, again, I was a kid as well, and I remember just thinking, oh, that's a cool martial arts movie. I enjoyed that, but I think if I were to go back and watch it now, I would appreciate the nuances of it a bit more, hopefully. But yeah, as a child, I just remember it being just a cool movie where a bunch of people beat up a bunch of bad guys.
Who's the director on that?
Stanley Kubrick.
Shut up. Who I'm looking that up right now because
All right.
I was.
You know,
Oh,
you
it was
could've-
Ang Lee.
You,
It was
you
Ang
could have
Lee.
avoided saying you were looking that up, and no one would have batted an eye.
All right, let's move on to our last movie for the year 2000. I think we'll have a lot to say about this one. X-Men. Now, I love the X-Men. I mean, I've always been a huge fan of the X-Men. But for some reason, the X-Men movies, I don't hate them. I don't dislike them. But I've never fallen in love with any of them. But I do remember, enjoying the original X-Men movie. I remember enjoying it. And I think this movie, as well as the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, which we will talk about in a future episode, I think those movies are chiefly responsible for the current age of superhero movies as we know it. So, I mean, that's what I feel about the X-Men movie. What do you guys feel about it?
Trevor, you go ahead.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was like the X-Men was like the first major property to have a movie kind of in that late 90s, early 2000s period, correct?
Yeah.
Of like the PG-13 rating that really, yeah. I mean, technically you can make the argument that it was the Wesley Snipes Blade,
Well, yeah.
but as far as like a movie that like it would have been appropriate to take younger kids to.
Right. Well, that's kind of what I was going to get into. Is it's like through the 90s, I mean, the studios were kind of playing around with the idea of superhero movies, but it was like very lesser known properties up to that point.
Yeah, like they were doing
the Phantom.
Well, no, it's like it's kind of like
Darkman.
It's the unofficial like Golden Age Americana trilogy where it's like the Phantom, the Rocketeer, and the Shadow.
The Shadow.
Yeah.
Was Darkman even a comic? I always get those two mixed up.
I'm not sure.
I don't know. All I know is Sam Raimi did Darkman, but I forget if that was like pre-existing.
Well, it's like you also had The Mask, which most people didn't even know was a comic.
Right.
And then there was the Dick Tracy movie by Warren Beatty, which if I could just branch off real quick to say how much of a fucking boss move that entire production was, where Warren Beatty wasn't allowed to make a Dick Tracy movie because he didn't own, the people who owned the rights to it were like, oh no. So he just like legit bought the rights to Dick Tracy. Like he still owns the character, the IP Dick Tracy. So
that's a boss move.
Yeah. That is a boss move.
Look at me, I'm Dick Tracy. Take that, prune face.
Yeah. So yeah, but yeah, to your point, Trevor, it was like the lesser known IPs.
That's Blake's side content for this episode: boss moves of history. But back to my point. At the end of the day, like X-Men wasn't the greatest superhero movie by any stretch.
Yeah.
But for the first like major attempt in a decade plus,
right,
of like a major property, especially with an ensemble cast,
right.
I mean, it's pretty solid. I think I would honestly take the first one over a lot of the other X-Men movies. Like X2, I like a little bit better, but like Last Stand, no. And Origins Wolverine, oh god.
Well, X2 was like the first, one of the first great superhero sequels.
Yeah.
Right. That and Spider-Man 2.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, it was literally X2 one year and then Spider-Man 2 the next year.
Right.
They were basically the Dark Knight before the Dark Knight came out.
Mm-hmm.
If I have one gripe in retrospect, it's the costumes. Like I know they were kind of going for the ultimate look, which we'll get into in a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But if Spider-Man can have a pretty comic accurate costume, why can't it see Wolverine in yellow and blue?
Well,
yeah.
Even if it's a little more on the subtle side.
In that regard, I think it works better for Spider-Man because, even though Tobey Maguire was pushing 30 at the time, the character he was playing in that movie was a high school student, so it makes a little more sense for a high school student to be flashy about it, whereas the X-Men are supposed to be mature adults, and the X-Men movie was, for the most part, a fairly mature movie. Like, it was it was not necessarily like you could take a kid to it, but it wasn't necessarily made for kids. It was a fairly mature movie. So I think because keep in mind the X-Men cartoon just finished like 3 years before this movie came out. So I think having all those characters and those bright, colorful costumes from the cartoon or even the comics would have undermined the tone of that the movie was going for to an extreme degree.
Well, especially with the subject matter, like the entire the actual plot of the movie is like you're having basically a giant allegory for the civil rights movement that was directed by an openly gay man. Like that was yeah.
But I do like how X-Men was like the first superhero movie that took a very mature and nuanced stance on its plot. Because before that, the only really big superhero movies you had, I mean, you had of course the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, which I mean had a noticeable difference in quality between each movie. And the best one, obviously, is the original one. And even that one it has its slapstick moments and its silly moments. And it's definitely a product of its time. And
I would still say, though, like, no series probably burned out worse than that one.
Yeah.
You don't like Radiation Man?
The Quest for Peace.
The Quest for Acrylic Nails.
Ugh.
Yeah.
And then after that, you had the Batman, the Burton and Schumacher Batman movies from '89 up until like the mid '90s. And I mean it was definitely darker, but it wasn't necessarily more mature, if that makes sense.
Well, two of them were darker.
But yeah. The other two were made.
The other two were blindingly bright.
Yeah.
I am currently enjoying that there is a moderate reconsideration that Batman Forever is indeed fun in its own right.
No, it's not.
No.
But yeah, so that was really all there was from the 70s up until the X-Men movie in terms of superhero movies. So this was the first one to make people go, you know what, maybe this is something that like everybody can enjoy. And then now you look at it now, you have like grandmothers sharing Thanos memes on Facebook and actually understanding the joke. And you know what? It's a good time to be a nerd. It really is.
Right.
So, any other thoughts on X-Men?
I would say, by today's standards, it's one of the things about it that probably aged. I wouldn't say poorly, but strangely, is that it's a very short movie.
It is.
Like it's only 90 minutes long, and as far as like the pacing and the story structure and everything, more so than and once again, today's standards, more so than like a blockbuster, event, group origin film, it feels like the pilot episode to a TV show now.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Mentioning, going back to again how the X-Men cartoon had just ended a couple years before this movie. I think that's one thing that always kept me from falling in love with it, like a lot of other people, because that cartoon was so fresh in my mind still, especially at that age. And I've always been so upset that my favorite X-Men, Gambit, was only used in the worst movie in the whole franchise. And then my other favorite X-Men, Nightcrawler, who was done very well in X2, never made another appearance again. Well, in the prequel movies he did, but
right.
And
but he was kind of, except in like Dark Phoenix, he was kind of an over-glorified background character a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, he is. I think Apocalypse is very underrated. Like it's not great, but
I still haven't seen it.
I enjoyed it, and I like Nightcrawler in it. He's fun in that movie. I mean, once again, he doesn't have like a big moment like.
He doesn't have nearly the personality of what's
whatever
his name? Alan
Alan.
Cummings, right?
Yeah. He doesn't have like a big scene like Alan Cummings going through the White House. So.
All right. Well, that takes care of movies. Let's move on to music. I was looking at like the top 100 songs for the year 2000, and it was a pretty diverse
God,
list.
this is going to be a long episode.
We're Trevor, go to bed. But I was looking at the top 100, and it was a very diverse list. Like, there was a little bit of everything. There was some country, there was some alternative rock, but the thing there was the most was like a lot of pop and boy bands, because I think those genres were still holding on very well from the 90s. So just a couple songs that like stuck out to me that I remember very vividly from this time was Kryptonite by Three Doors Down. I fucking remember that song being on the radio like every fucking day. Why are y'all laughing?
It's just so goofy now.
It is a very goofy song, but I'm just saying that like I remember that song being on the radio every fucking day, no matter where I went.
I remember it in a lot of media in general.
Yeah. Of course, I remember Bye 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 by NSYNC. That was another song I heard almost everywhere. This song, I heard, and it annoyed the shit out of me so much, and it became the anthem of every girl who only went to school to start fights. Oops, I Did It Again by Britney Spears. And then... Am I wrong, though?
I can't argue.
What, was I a little too on the nose with that one?
Wait, are we gonna get to talk about each song just a little bit, or are you just gonna...
Yeah. I'm just telling you the songs that I remember, and then we're gonna go into like what you guys remember and what you guys think of these songs. And then the last one I have on my list, especially
Blake was honestly in fear you weren't gonna let him talk about the songs.
Hold on, I want to talk about the music.
I could hear the fear in his voice.
I'm still tickled by it was enjoyed by every girl that went to start fights, because now I'm imagining like a dirty tank top and Cookie Monster PJ pants.
Oh, no.
with perpetually wet hair and a smoker's cough.
In the fifth grade.
In the 5th grade. Hey, I mean, I saw him in middle school, so it's not that much of a stretch.
Wet hair.
Come on, we all had that classmate who always came to class with wet hair in the morning. Are you okay?
Just keep going. Go on.
It's too real. You're taking him back.
I thought that was the point.
Cause like, what was that look like? Aren't you cold? Oh man.
And then the last song on my list, and I know you guys are gonna enjoy this one because we had a lot of goofy jokes about this song. "Arms Wide Open" by Creed. I remember Creed being on the radio a lot in general, and I remember every song sounding exactly the fucking same.
They were Nickelback before Nickelback.
Yeah, like that's the perfect description.
I needed subtitles for half their songs.
I just remember with "Arms Wide Open" was like the theme song to the marketing campaign for Titan AE.
Oh my god, that movie. Donnie, why didn't you list that movie?
Because it wasn't directed by Stanley Kubrick.
That's fair.
So, what do you guys think of these songs, and are there any songs that you guys like remember from that time?
Well, I'll bring up one you mentioned and one you didn't mention. As far as the Superman theme song for the year 2000, "It's Not Easy" by Five for Fighting is better than Kryptonite.
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah. So that's what I have to say about that. And then I'm just still giggling over every girl that wanted to start fights.
Am I wrong?
So I remember growing up, usually like before school, we would have on like VH1 or MTV, just watching music videos in the morning.
Yeah.
I remember that. And I remember seeing the music video for that Creed song like more than anything else around that time.
Yeah.
Like I feel like they would play it at least like 3 times a morning.
It's time for Sunday service.
I had my entire like timeline and years mixed up because, well, honoring what you said, Trevor, I didn't understand half of what the guy in the Creed was saying, and then I thought it came out in 2001. So when I just heard, I just heard the news today. It seems my life is going to change, and I didn't understand anything else. I just assumed the song was about 9/11. Like,
oh my God.
So yeah.
Is that the only lyric you remembered?
Well, yeah, because I don't understand the guy. Like it was all I got was, well, I just heard the news today, and then for the rest of the song, he just sounded like a golden retriever with peanut butter in his mouth.
You got a good point.
Yeah, or better yet, he just sounded like Dumbledore when he was drinking that piss water.
Oh God.
Great, Blake. You triggered our guest.
No.
It can only taste so bad. I've gone on this rant many times.
No.
He's several centuries old. How can he have never tasted bad poo water before?
Several centuries old. He's not Yoda.
I don't know.
All right. Speaking of Dumbledore, we're gonna move into books now.
Okay.
The year 2000 is when the Goblet of Fire book came out. And it was also, we were 1 year away from the first movie, Sorcerer's Stone. And this was when, like, Potter Mania was really getting ready to, like, kick the fuck off. Especially since Goblet of Fire came out this year. The first movie came out the following year. And then we had, like, a 3-year break before a new book came out. I just remember fucking everybody was reading Harry Potter at this time. And I just remember being like, it was the new Pokemon. It was a big fucking deal. What do you guys remember?
Well, I don't remember what was the popular book amongst girls that went to school to start fights.
It was a book that united us all, okay?
It was, unless they were reading Holes, but...
Jesus.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how to read, so I don't know what I can add to this conversation. But
You're out of your element.
Oh, yeah, you still haven't read the books, have you?
No, I read the first book. I read The Sorcerer's Stone, and I remember my dad coming home and be like, "Hey, have you read?" And I don't know why he's asking me this question. It's like, Dad, I don't have any money. Like anything I own, like you bought for me, so you like.
He asked you if you've like checked out like frivolous things.
Yeah.
Dad, I'm 10. I don't have any money.
Yeah, it's like everything. You should be aware of like everything I'm doing and owning right now because it obviously
Blake,
came
you
from
picked up one of those N64s?
Yeah, it's like, what, are you going to come in my room next time and like ask for gas money? But but anyway, he's like, yeah, have you read Harold Plopper? Or
that's like the Mad Magazine parody.
Right.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, so yeah, I definitely remember Harry Potter like beginning.
Yeah. What was fun was, at the time, I had not moved to this area yet. I was still living in fucking Romney, West Virginia, which is a tiny-ass fucking town.
Yeah.
And it's a very religious town. And I was, like, one of the very few kids in my elementary school there that, like, was reading Harry Potter, that was, like, into Harry Potter, because so many of my classmates' families forbade them from, like, even touching the stuff because they thought it was demonic and satanic and you were going to go to hell if you even looked at it. So it was weird for me being in that kind of environment, coming to school wearing a Harry Potter shirt and having my classmates tell me that I'm going to hell. It happened.
Well, I mean, you are, but
I mean,
whatever.
you're not wrong. It was just funny hearing it from an 8-year-old.
It's just for different reasons, you know?
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Trevor?
Well, no, I definitely agree with you. I don't remember a whole lot about the Potter Mania because I got into it kind of late. but I definitely remember Goblet of Fire really being the peak.
Yeah.
I don't I don't really remember Order of the Phoenix coming out or Half-Blood Prince. Like, I remember they came out, but it didn't seem like as big of a deal in comparison.
Really?
This was like that kind of perfect midpoint, and I don't know. Like, when it comes to other book series, like outside of like Twilight or Hunger Games, can you really think of any other book where there were like midnight releases?
No.
Like,
and I feel like and I do have to agree that you brought up the Goblet of Fire. I feel like that was when like it really started becoming like a big like anticipation countdown event like that. I feel like that may have been when they started having like midnight releases and stuff.
You had the midnight releases. You had like displays in every store. Like, I have that specific like green cover like burned into my memory more than any of the other books.
Yeah.
But
any other thoughts?
I like Cedric a lot. He's a good character.
You're not wrong. He's a good boy.
He's a good boy. Didn't deserve it.
So 2000 also saw the launch of Ultimate Marvel, specifically starting with Ultimate Spider-Man. Ultimate X-Men would follow the next year, and then the Ultimate Fantastic Four would come a little bit after that. Ultimate Marvel was basically kind of a soft reboot, in a way, of the entire Marvel universe. It was meant for people who were basically the age that we were at this time, younger readers, new readers, who didn't want to feel overwhelmed with the 60 years of continuity that Marvel had built up at the time. Personally, I never got into Ultimate Marvel. I was never a huge fan of it. I think part of it was because, ironically, I was the target demographic for Ultimate Marvel, but I was also the wrong demographic. Because even though I was a younger reader, I was still very knowledgeable and invested in a lot of the continuity of a lot of Marvel characters at the time. And also, I remember seeing like the early comic covers of Ultimate Spider-Man and absolutely fucking hating the artwork. And I think that was a huge turnoff for me as well. Trevor, what are your thoughts on Ultimate Marvel?
I kind of had the exact opposite approach, especially with Spider-Man. I saw those exact same covers all over the place, and I was like, whoa, I kind of like this new take. I like that the webbing on his suit was like really muted, and in a lot of promotional material, like I thought that's kind of cool. Like, it's really minimalist. You don't even see the webbing.
Right. And
I just liked that it was kind of like that solid blue and red. But I don't know. I was kind of a fan of the Ultimate Wave. Like, I didn't really keep up with the books. It was kind of hard to keep up with comics at that age. There weren't a lot of ways to, unless you like mailed out for them.
Yeah, especially since in our hometown there was no comic store for the longest time.
Right. But yeah, no, I loved the aesthetic of the Ultimate books I kind of followed, especially Spider-Man. And I like that we got like a younger take on the character after like all these years. I mean, I felt what I imagine a lot of younger people today feel with like Miles. Like, it's like, whoa, it's this cool kind of new young Spider-Man that you can kind of relate to. And like, you had these wild new takes on the villains. Like, you know, you had this big bulky Venom that like didn't have the logo on his chest. You had this weird kind of Hulk-looking Green Goblin. But I liked that it was like a new continuity, but it was a good chance to like reboot things and like make it entry level for people.
Right.
Recently, I've been a big fan of DC's kind of attempt at it. They have those Earth 1 books.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, those are great.
Yeah, I think there's another Green Lantern one coming out before long. But I just like that. I like these self-contained, like, we're not making the characters so different enough that they're not recognizable, but we're playing around with their origin, their backstories a little bit. I kind of like it because it gets a little more established than like a one-off what-if issue.
Right.
So I don't know. I was a big fan.
It was also because Ultimate Marvel also came about because the 90s, especially the late 90s, was a very, very rough time for the comic industry as a whole, but especially Marvel. Marvel was on the verge of bankruptcy, actually, at the time. And Ultimate Marvel was basically done as like a Hail Mary to try to like get things back on track. things were so bad that the guy that they brought in to start Ultimate Marvel legit thought, I'm being brought in to work on the final Marvel book ever. To give you an idea of the situation at the time. But Blake, what are your thoughts on Ultimate Marvel?
So I would have probably very much been who they were going after, because I am fine with, trying out characters and titles, but I don't want to have to go through like a Wikipedia page for like 60 years of backstory and continuity. I like it when, stuff exists as its own standalone setup. Like my favorite Superman story is All-Star, which you don't have to read anything before or after that. So, yeah, well, I haven't read any of Ultimate Spider-Man, but I've read the Ultimates, book 1 and 2, which is basically Ultimate Avengers, but they're called the Ultimates. And, yeah, it's great. I love it. Like, those books gave you more of a glimpse of what a PG-13 movie of that stuff would look like, more so than the mainstream comics did at the time.
Right.
Since you brought up like a specific actual book that you checked out, I used to love Ultimate Hulk versus Wolverine.
Yeah. That was Damon Lindelof too.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was Damon Lindelof.
Yeah, like a bunch of monks like worship Hulk as a deity, and he gets mad at Wolverine, rips him in half, and throws up his legs up the side of a mountain.
Which that was
book.
That was like one of the best things about it, and then I feel like eventually it became one of the worst things about it. It was more mature, and then it started to have a lot of choices and ideas where it felt like it was being edgy just for the sake of edginess.
Yeah, I remember kind of feeling that when I think She-Hulk showed up.
Yeah.
So, like this weird kind of edgy version of her.
I mean, like, the Ultimate Spider-Man was popular. The Ultimates was popular. Probably the Ultimates inspired Joss Whedon more than any of the mainstream Avengers comics. But people legit hate Ultimatum. Like, they think it's like one of the worst comic events in history.
All right, moving on.
Oh, okay.
I mean, does anybody else have any other thoughts on Ultimate Marvel?
I just didn't know if there was like any thoughts on like Ultimatum, like
I've never read it.
That's one I never got a chance to check out.
Oh well, it's very it rustled people's jimmies.
Quality review.
Moving on to TV. So we'll start with TV shows that started in the year 2000. Just going to kind of run through them here. Some popular ones. Yu-Gi-Oh!, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Malcolm in the Middle, and Survivor. I was into Yu-Gi-Oh! For like a minute in like middle school, and then that was it. I just never really caught on to it that much. Probably the worst case of fucking hair since Dragon Ball Z. Curb Your Enthusiasm, I did not watch until years later when you showed it to me, Trevor. But it's like, the humor in that show is so quirky and dry. Like, I absolutely love it.
I would personally take it over Seinfeld any day at this point.
Well, yeah, Seinfeld's butt. But anyway.
Well.
Go on.
No. What were you saying?
I was just saying Seinfeld's butt. Like. But Malcolm in the Middle, I remember like watching that show around this time and like kind of being tickled by it, but not really at the same time. It was just a weird show to me. And then Survivor was like the beginning of the age of reality television that we saw so much of during this decade. And that the culture surrounding reality TV really confused me even at that age, because everybody talked shit about it. Everybody talked about how much they hated it. And yet somebody's got to be watching it because they keep making it. So it just really confused me about how nobody liked it and yet everybody was watching it. What do you guys remember about any of these shows or any other shows that came on at that time?
Go ahead, Trevor.
You go first this time.
Okay. I mean, I only really have an opinion on Yu-Gi-Oh! As like an IP in general, not just the show. Yeah. But to this day, I'm still very proud of myself that I did not spend one dime on those fucking cards. Correction.
I played Magic the Gathering, so it's not like I can really look down on anybody who did.
Ooh.
Correction. I'm still proud that I didn't beg my mom to spend one dime on those cards. And then Malcolm in the Middle, like, I don't know, that show actually pissed me off a lot because it was one of those shows where I was like, damn, everyone in the show is a dickhead.
Yeah, I could definitely get behind that.
But
in a weird way, I keep coming back to this idea. It's almost like a strange family-friendly predecessor for Always Sunny.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, we're like, yeah, but I guess like with Always Sunny, it's like either go big or go home. Like either make them like the absolute scum of the earth, or
it's almost like a family-oriented like vanilla version of it. I don't know.
Yeah. And then later on, they made a more vanilla version of Malcolm in the Middle called just The Middle with the
That's
mom
right.
from Everybody Loves Raymond. And honest to God,
it was the dad was the janitor from Scrubs, right?
Yes, and then the youngest boy, the youngest son, seemed like he would have been like the long-lost little brother of the youngest brother in Malcolm in the Middle. Like, it was the weirdest shit ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what I have to say about some of that stuff.
What about you, Trevor?
Well, going on to Yu-Gi-Oh, I was obsessed in that early era where it was like, you know, the actual character called Yugi.
Right.
Once like they started doing those like other seasons or like other people, that's kind of when I dwindled off. Like the card game became too elaborate.
Yeah.
It doesn't even resemble itself these days. I have no idea what's going on.
That's what caused me to get out of the because I played the game for a bit, and that's what caused me to get out of the game, and also what caused me to like not have any interest in the game anymore was the fact that like so many of the cards they would play in the show would not have the same effect as the actual game.
It felt like they made it up on the fly. Pokemon did the same thing though. They would like just make up stuff on the fly.
Well, to be fair, nobody actually played the Pokemon card game. They just collected the cards to have them.
Well, I mean the video games too.
Oh, yeah.
It's like Pikachu, throw some dirt at the guy to blind him. It's like, no, you can't. But yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh! I was obsessed in that early era. I had tons of the cards, too many to count. I played a lot of tournaments, but it was a lot of fun in that time, but it's one of the earliest things I can remember like growing out of.
Yeah.
I just kind of hit a point where I'm like, I'm not interested in this anymore.
Yeah, same.
But yeah, Malcolm in the Middle kind of already said my piece with that. Curb, I am still obsessed with to this day. But Donnie, like you said, I kind of got into it pretty late as well. Like
well, it definitely wasn't a show
had to have been when I was in college.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't a show for people that were the age that we were at the time.
Right. No, it's. I mean, the way the plot works and like the actual writing, like it's.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of have to have a more mature palate.
Mm-hmm.
It's better than Seinfeld.
Yeah.
It's better than Seinfeld. Long story short, but no, I love that show, and I hope it keeps going for a few more seasons.
Yeah.
It's funny because I always hear like when they wrap a season, like Larry David acts all pissed off and like angry, like he never wants to do it again, and then like he'll come back a year later and then do it. It's great, but I love how narcissistic that character is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that about covers it.
All right.
One of the best jokes that has ever been said about the MAGA hat, which was, what's Larry David's buddy name in that show again, Trevor? Who lives in his guest house? Who?
Jeff. Leon.
Leon says, "You know why you never see anyone wearing a MAGA hat backwards? That's because if you're going to get your ass kicked, you want to see it coming."
That's great.
If you want a good entry level episode of Curb, the first episode of the newest season is amazing.
Yeah,
and that's where that joke comes from.
Yeah, it is.
All right, let's move on to shows that ended in the year 2000. I just have a couple here that like I distinctly remember very well. All that, that shit, like 90s Nickelodeon was my fucking jam. Especially the Snick block. For those of you who aren't familiar, Nickelodeon.
Snick block.
That's what it is. It's a block.
The Donnie's Snick Rant 8-hour version uncut.
Yeah.
Eat my butt. Anyway, I fucking loved Snick specifically on 90s Nickelodeon. For those of you who aren't for those of you who don't remember, why are you laughing?
It just sounds funny.
I mean, I'm not the one who fucking named it. That's what it was called.
I fucking love Snick.
Dude, the shit was great.
I don't think anyone's uttered that sentence in like 2 years.
I mean, I'm a pioneer, I guess. But anyway, all that was pretty awesome. 90s Nickelodeon. It was basically Saturday Night Live for kids.
Mm-hmm.
Another show that ended in 2000 that I was a huge fan of was Beast Machines, Transformers. Ooh. That show was like very underrated in my opinion. I honestly enjoyed it more than original Transformers. And then another show that ended in the year 2000, I didn't watch a lot of, but I watched a lot of the shows that were connected to it. The Superman the Animated Series. The DC animated shows at the time were a big fucking deal as well. I remember loving the Batman animated series. So
it's the best one.
Yeah, it is.
Of all the superhero cartoons, like it's the cliche answer, but it's also undeniable. Like Batman, of the '90s cartoon was the best one.
It's in the top for me. It's in the top. It's definitely in the top tier. But I think I like, as far as all like every superhero cartoon ever, I think I prefer Spectacular Spider-Man the most. But that's just
good call.
But yeah, those are the shows that I remember that ended in the year 2000. What about you guys? What are your thoughts on those shows, and what are your thoughts on any other shows that may have ended then?
I mean the '90s Superman animated series. I mean, it's obviously not in, I guess, the top 3 or the top 5 with most people, but I feel like it's very underrated. I feel like it was pretty solid. And then all that came back recently, didn't it? Like they're doing it again. Yeah, I'm not saying that invalidates the topic. I feel like
it was rebooted once before too.
It was like
maybe around like 2007 or 8 or something.
That was earlier. That's something I forgot to mention. Like all that ended in 2000, and it was weird because all that was a pretty fucking popular show for Nickelodeon throughout the entire 90s, and then it just ended without any announcement or anything out of nowhere in 2000. Like I remember being a kid and just watching TV one day, and it's suddenly just like, oh, there's no more all that anymore. And then like 2 years later, it was actually 2002, they brought the show back with a whole new cast and everything, which we might talk about when we get to that year. And then that went on for a little bit, and then it got canceled again, and then just recently they brought it back again with another new cast, and they brought back some of the cast from the original series as well. Bigger Nick heartbreak was the Butt Ugly Martians getting canceled. I totally forgot about that show.
And then Kablam didn't end in 2000? Kablam was still going on?
I believe so, but I will double check here real quick.
I feel like that was one of those Nick shows where they would just like spam a bunch of new episodes every once in a while.
Yeah. Oh, dude, nothing was better. Nothing was better than Action League Now.
I don't know. I Prometheus and Bob was my fucking shit.
I feel like Action League Now had like a really short like solo.
It did.
Show.
Well,
which it was really just it didn't have any new episodes. They just took the bits from Kablam and just aired them as single episodes.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did. And
but
that's weird though.
You are right, Blake. Kablam did end in 2000.
Well, yeah. Then I would say pour one out for Kablam.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Let me branch off into just saying like, Action League Now should have tried to, I guess, reboot or keep that alive. They should have tried to do more with that than they did, because that was, I mean, at the time, that was for the age group, that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
So I feel like they could have legit I don't know what their problem is. I guess they didn't think it was worthy enough of like a full like 30-minute block, but I don't know. That was needless to say that was probably one of my favorite things. That and Hey Arnold. Yeah.
All right. What are your
Trevor?
thoughts, Trevor?
So the first thing I want to say, with kind of like the Bruce Timm verse of shows, to compare the two, I clearly remember a ton of episodes of like the Batman animated series and like the New Adventures.
Yeah.
The Superman show, on the other hand, I don't. But one thing I'll give the Superman show is it gave me my first glimpse of a lot of the weirdness that comes with DC. Mm-hmm. Like some of the zany villains you found in that show, like I absolutely love. I mean, one of my favorite DC villains is still Parasite, and that was the first time I ever saw that character. Same with like Metallo,
Mr. Mxyzptlk.
Yeah, like that was me and a lot of other kids' like first experience with those characters.
I mean it's. Oh, I'm sorry, Trevor. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, it's when people say Superman doesn't have any good villains, all he has is Lex Luthor. No, the real problem is you're just unaware of his other villains.
Right. No, he has like tons of like neat villains that really kind of challenge his themes and his powers. That's why I love Parasite. He's like the perfect equal to him. But all that I was never really into. That was kind of one of those shows with like background noise at best.
Yeah.
But one show I actually had to look up that it ended in 2000, but I clearly remember was the really dumb Avengers cartoon. Do you guys remember that?
I vaguely remember that.
Oh my God! Why would they make an Avengers cartoon where Cap, Thor, and Hulk and Iron Man never show up? It was all the secondary characters. The like, if I remember correctly, the leader-ish character that was in every episode was Hawkeye.
Huh.
And that and like Scarlet Witch was there, and Vision, and Wonder Man. But like, why would you make a Avengers show where it's just the secondary Avengers?
Big oof.
It was probably because, like I said at the time, the 90s was a very rough time for comics, and they might have been trying to revitalize some of their lesser-known characters to try to like jumpstart things.
And I would have to look at the years, but what probably also led to that was, I mean, Iron Man had a cartoon, Cap had a cartoon.
Right.
They probably didn't want to like confuse kids, I guess.
Yeah.
But there were episodes of this Avengers show where like, you know, Cap would show up for a bit or Thor, but they weren't like mainstay characters. They'd only be in like one or two episodes.
Right.
And they show up in the intro for like a second.
Would that have had something to do with like licensing rights at the time, maybe?
It could have. I don't know. But my thing is, like, if it was a licensing issue, why were they allowed to show up at all? But, you know,
well, that's fair. Well, I don't know.
But I just remember that show and it being a giant tease for like the main Avengers, and it bugged me when you saw them in the intro because it's like, oh cool, I'm not going to see any of these characters.
Right.
But other than that, Donnie, you brought up Beast Machines.
Yeah.
That's another one where I don't remember a lot of specific episodes. I just remember liking it way more than Beast Wars.
Yeah.
I felt like Beast Wars wasn't quite there. Like the CG animation wasn't that great.
Right.
And a lot of the plot lines were like really zany.
Mm-hmm.
And Beast Machines kind of had that more serious tone. Mm-hmm. But I definitely remember like having a lot of the toys from that one of like Optimus and the other main guys. Yeah. Is that the one where Megatron turns into a dragon?
I think he turns into a T-Rex. I know Optimus is like a...
Well, that was in Beast Wars.
Oh, I know Optimus is a gorilla.
Yeah, like Optimus was a gorilla in Beast Wars and Beast Machines.
Yeah.
Optimus Primal.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah. I thought that show was the fucking shit when I was a kid.
Well, it was like one of the first, like, besides like Reboot, one of the first like full 3D shows I can recall.
Right.
that actually like didn't look like complete ass.
Right. Which even
So.
Reboot, as cool as Reboot was, it too kind of looked like ass, if we're being honest.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what I was kind of getting at with Beast Wars. I think Beast Machines is like when you first kind of started seeing those fully 3D shows that were actually well made and
Right.
the technology was there. But yeah.
There was this one show like that at the time, like in the vein of like Beast Wars and Reboot, where it was like a fully CG show that like if you try to rewatch it. No. There was this one. It was, and like I'm probably gonna get laughed at for this shit, but like they would show it on like Tech TV, which became G4, and it was like this show where like each planet was an element, and then like it was a team of like different members of those races, those cultures, those ethnicities, the elements, and they had to like band together. Like the main guy was like from the rock planet, and he would just keep saying over and over again, well, I'm just a miner, and that was like him being like the humble, reluctant hero. And I can't remember what that show was called, but
I don't remember this show at all.
It sounds super familiar, but I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, like there was an ice planet, there was a fire planet, like, and I think like fire were the bad guys once again. But
I thought, when you first started saying that, I thought you were talking about Eye Drops, which I used to watch all the time on Tech TV, which was
those
an
were like
anthology
shorts.
show.
Yeah.
I loved it though, and it was like good 3D. But
yeah, no, this was like a legit like. Like a story. Like this was this wasn't an anthology. This was, it was a series. Yeah, no, but yeah, no.
Let's move into our final topic for tonight. Talk about video games of the year 2000. I feel like we're all three of us are going to have some serious nostalgia here. In the year 2000 was when. It was a good time to be playing video games during the 2000s. In the year 2000, the PS2 and the Xbox both came out, and the Gamecube was not that far behind. And all three of those consoles, especially the PS2, were huge fucking deals. And then it's also kind of weird, though, because in the year 2000, the previous generation went out with a bang in this year, because some big games that came out in the year 2000. We had Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, which is, in my opinion, like at the very least the best of the Pro Skater games. You had Majora's Mask, which I remember like seeing everywhere when it came out. You had Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which is still played in tournaments to this day.
Oh.
Yeah. You had the Spider-Man game for like the N64 and the PS1, which was just a really cool game, and it was a really cool, like, if you were trying to like find a way to introduce yourself to Spider-Man, this was like a good game to play. And then, like I said, just the PS2, the Xbox, and the GameCube shortly after, like, video game culture, like the 90s was a big decade for video games as well, especially with the advent of the PS1. And then just when we thought it couldn't get any better, these consoles came out, right, hot on the heels of these games that just came out. What are your guys' thoughts on these games, consoles, and other stuff that came out of this year?
Trevor, you'll have more to say than me on this.
Yeah, Trevor, you start.
All right. So, Donnie, as you were saying, like, I know we're talking about like PS2, GameCube, Xbox, but man, did the previous consoles go out with a bang. Like, two of my all-time favorite games came out in 2000. The original Paper Mario.
Mm-hmm.
Love that game. One of my favorite RPGs ever, except maybe the sequel.
Mm-hmm.
And also, what I kind of consider underrated, Banjo-Tooie came out in 2000 as well.
I remember that.
A lot of people kind of crap on that one compared to the original, but I like certain elements of it more. But I mean, those were they're still two of my all-time favorites. Along with that, you mentioned Marvel vs. Capcom 2. By far, my favorite arcade game ever.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime I ever went to an arcade as a kid and they had Marvel vs. Capcom 2,
game on.
$20 right there.
Yep.
Cable, Mega Man, Spider-Man, call it a day.
Gambit, Spider-Man, Venom.
There you go. You learn a lot by who uses which characters in Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
Yeah.
But going into the newer consoles, PS2 to this day still has one of the best launch window of titles ever.
Yeah.
I can't think of a single console since that's been that great.
Like,
most consoles since, it was like you get one or two good things, and then you're like waiting 6-7 months for a good game.
Exactly.
I mean,
like the PS2,
I've seen that image before.
Like the first year and a half, 2 years of the PS2, it was just like boom, 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 hit after hit
Right.
after hit after hit. Like it didn't stop.
And I feel like with that generation, you kind of had that first initial round of like being able to find like underrated like games you had never heard of.
Right.
You had a little bit of it with PS1 and N64, but like I don't know. Like when I had a PS2, it was like I would find a game that was out for like 3-4 years that I had never heard of and took a chance on.
Right.
And it was like awesome. Like it like blew me away. You have a lot of that on the GameCube as well. Like what was the one I really love on GameCube? It was called Gotcha Force. It was like a sandbox like battle game, but you played as like little action figures, and there were like hundreds upon hundreds of playable characters, and I never saw promotional material for the game. I never heard anyone else talk about it, and it was like, wow, you're finally seeing like kind of those cult classics come in. But I don't know. I loved my little GameCube. I still have it around here somewhere. That thing is the most durable console I've ever owned.
It was literally a brick.
Yeah.
And I mean that in a good way.
I didn't get a PS2 until a little bit later, so I can't speak as much on it, but my GameCube, I had so many like games I still love to this day. There was like Luigi's Mansion, Smash Brothers Melee, Rayman 3. I remember loving that one a lot. I was never a Rayman fan before that.
Right.
The Beautiful Joe games, those were awesome. Still love them. But
I got the PS2 shortly after launch, and like I loved that system. I still to this day love that system. I still own most of my games that I got during that system, and still to this day I'll randomly go to like a retro video game store near here, and we'll just randomly find a game that I had never heard of that just looks cool, and I'll take a chance on it, like you said, and it'll end up blowing me away.
Exactly.
And like in my opinion, the PS2 is the best console of all time. Just its entire lifespan from beginning to end was just so fantastic. So many great games. And my favorite game of all time originated on the PS2, which is Final Fantasy X, which we will definitely talk about.
Not just originated, but was a launch title.
It came out
that launch window.
Yeah, it came out in 2001, so yeah, close enough.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, like just I have never owned an Xbox system. I've never liked Xbox. That's just my personal preference. I remember at that time looking at the Xbox and seeing what it had to offer and just thinking, no thanks. How
do you not like classics like Blinks the Time Sweeper?
Yeah, tell me about it. But hey, at least they had that Star Wars Episode 1 Kenobi game that like ran at 5 frames per second.
Yeah.
And the GameCube, like, I had a ton of friends who had a GameCube, but I did not have a GameCube myself. And I think that's just because by that point I had pretty much checked out entirely on Nintendo, because that was when Nintendo was first starting to do like all their games were strictly properties that they owned. That was when they first started doing that, and it became much more noticeable by the time they hit the Wii. And I just didn't really care for Mario at that time. I didn't really care for Legend of Zelda. You know, a lot of those, you know, IPs that Nintendo owned in-house, I just didn't really care for, so therefore their system just didn't have much appeal to me. But, you know, I had a lot of friends who had GameCubes and had a lot of multiplayer games. I mean, Smash Brothers was always a staple. I don't like Smash Brothers. I'm not good at Smash Brothers. Those two sentences are probably connected.
I was gonna say.
But anytime a friend would be like, "Let's play some Smash Brothers," all right, let's play some fucking Smash Brothers. So it was just a good time for video games all around.
I know a couple games on GameCube Blake loved. You know what ones I'm talking about, Blake?
What ones?
You still awake over there?
I'm still awake.
I'm still awake. Time Splitters.
Oh yeah, shit, man. Like, wait, did that come out in 2000 or was that 2001?
That was GameCube.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll talk about GameCube. No, GameCube's next year. GameCube is
2001. But
2001.
yeah.
But no, like Time Splitters is like probably one of my favorite shooters of all time. Yeah, the multiplayer like on that was more fun than Halo. Like looking back, like the verses on the first Halo is fucking bland and boring. So whatever, I said what I said.
I said it.
And as far as like games that actually came out in 2000, I'm looking through them. I literally didn't own any of this. So Paper Mario was fun, and that's it. That's all I have.
One last shout out I give, Eternal Darkness on GameCube is probably the most creative horror game I've ever played.
Oh, I never got to play that, but I was always interested.
It's so good. I wish it got like a remake or something. But yeah.
Well, I think we have covered the year 2000 quite well, gentlemen.
We're not doing the election?
I mean, we can talk about the election if you want. I wasn't planning on it, but
I mean, I thought we were. I
was listening.
I was listening.
I thought we were going to touch on a little bit of everything.
I mean, if you want to talk about the election, go right ahead.
I mean, that was really where I got like the idea for what I was talking about in the beginning of the episode. Was like you can almost pinpoint a lot of shit not being as bad if Albert didn't miss the dunk. So
Albert missed the dunk. Yeah, so I mean, I guess I don't know if y'all have anything to add to it. I'm sure, we're not on completely different pages here too much, but yeah, that's what I have to say. It was
I mean, I just remember being 8 years old when the election was going on, and I remember the big scandal about how, George Bush won the popular vote, but Al Gore George Bush won the electoral college, but Al Gore won the popular vote, and it caused this huge debate who should be president. And I just remember all of that going on and seeing it in the media and hearing my parents' opinion on it, which is kind of garbage if we're being honest. But I just remember all of it going on and not really like having an opinion because again I was 8 years old. But I mean, looking back on it now, it's so stupid that was even a thing for multiple reasons. It just really it was one of the first moments where it made me. Where, like, it didn't make me realize, but it planted the seed in my head that, like, this country isn't the best country in the world like I've been told my entire life. There are a lot of things that we are very ass backwards on in comparison to the rest of the world.
Like climate change.
Yeah.
I said what I said. Speaking of Albert.
Right.
But you know what? Everybody comes back to make their money. He came back 6 years later with a documentary.
Yeah, I think if that Supreme Court case had gone the opposite direction, the world we would be living in right now would be a very, very different world. Fuck it, I'll say it. It'd be a better world for the most part.
Yep.
I was gonna say I'm not gonna go that far in an attempt to not divide people, but fuck it, people suck. It would be for the most part a much better world for a number of reasons. I think renewable energy sources would have been heavily invested in very early on, in which case I think at this point we would probably be free from oil, or at the very least foreign oil entirely. I think 9/11 still would have happened, but I think we wouldn't have wasted like a fucking decade in the wrong goddamn country.
Yeah.
I just think so many things would have been different. I think the entire world would be different, and I think for the most part we would be living in a world that is not so much of a struggle right now.
Yeah, that's basically anything and everything I was gonna say almost. So
Yeah.
I got what I needed out of that topic. So yeah.
What about
All
you,
right.
Trevor?
I really don't remember that election that well,
Right.
to be honest. I think you guys kind of hit all the main points that I could have added. So,
That was officially when I
Cool.
started taking an interest in that stuff. I mean, obviously I was way too young for it, but I mean that was really the seed being planted for me to have an interest in stuff like that. And but yeah, no, we would live in a very different world right now. So I didn't mean to muck up the tail end of this episode or whatever, but I mean,
You know,
if
we were having fun, but then you had to bring politics into it.
but I mean,
every time.
if we're gonna do a year, you got to do the big thing that year.
Yeah, I mean, I just
Yeah.
remember my parents trying to explain it to me, because I'd be like, what's the problem here? Why are you guys upset? And my mom would be like, they're trying to say George Bush shouldn't be president. And I'm like, well, why are they saying that? And my mom's like, well, because, he didn't have the most votes, but he won the election. I was like, well, how does that work? And my mom tried to explain the Electoral College to me, and I was just like, but he still doesn't have the most votes. And my mom's like, well, those don't matter. And I just went, but what? I thought that's how this whole thing was run this entire time, was that's how you win. You get the votes, you win. And I just remember, even at 8 years old, my parents trying to explain it to me, and me being like, this doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
Now, see, if that was today, you'd be accused of being a communist by your parents.
A sheeple.
Right?
Yeah, as people.
A sheeple. Oh, all right.
All right, well, I think we covered the year 2000 quite well, gentlemen. I had fun. I
Cool.
hope you had fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can't wait to get off this call and then find out that you accidentally didn't record it the entire time.
Oh, well, I got some bad news.
Oh,
No,
well, thanks for having me on, guys.
well, thank you for joining us, Trevor. We will definitely have you on here again soon. And I would like to thank my co-host, BVJ. You can follow him on Twitter at BVJ. You can follow me on Twitter at TheDonJohn1991. Trevor, is there any social media you'd like to plug? Any shameless self-promotion?
Yes, I have a Twitter as well that I say I use and then don't. At Bumbus Columbus.
Actually, you. Oh, go ahead, Trevor.
No, go ahead.
Actually, you can follow me online at Puka Saucy. Yes. So that is my private or public handle. BBJ is private. That's for people that I personally know in real life. So if you're listening to this and we actually know each other, you already follow me. If not, you're not allowed to follow me.
This
yeah,
is
no.
a trust thing.
As far as this is just no. I'm not gonna let some random dude listen to this see pictures of my kid. But but no. As far as a public pages and accounts, you can follow me at Puka Saucy.
And all of those links will be in the description.
Ooh.
So I want to thank you guys again for joining us tonight. I want to thank you guys at home for listening. Good night.
Oh,
Be good to
guys,
each other.
guys.
What?
I thought of a topic we didn't talk about for the year 2000.
What?
Battlefield Earth.
Oh, god damn.
Oh shit.
Oh,
Good night.
oh god damn. Fuck. Ugh.
All right, I've never even seen it.
I need to go to bed.
I just know that was John Travolta undoing all the goodwill of him being in Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
I need an 8-hour nap.
Yeah. And a Gatorade. Fuck.
Yeah. I just remember like at the time I'm like, what's this movie, or like why did it do bad? And my dad was like, well, it was ahead of its time, I guess. And I look back, I look back now and I'm
why
like,
do they all look kind of like Larry King?
and I look back now and I'm like, no, it wasn't ahead of its time. It just wasn't good.
It wasn't ahead of anything, in fact.
Oh.
Well.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to call it.
All right.
So,
It's a night.
Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you guys for listening. Good night. Be good to each other and stay safe.